It had been a while since Eddie, my father-in-law, moved into a retirement community. One night, Jimmy, my husband, spoke up, which was rare.
"If we don't have to take care of Dad anymore, you're useless to me. I'm leaving."
Ah, so that's what this is about. You want a divorce? Jimmy nods silently. I had been putting up with Jimmy's terrible behavior ever since he blamed our infertility on me. I decided to accept the divorce.
"I'll give you all the money we've saved together for your poor self."
With that, Jimmy left and moved back to his parents' home. After the divorce was finalized, I got a call from my ex-husband Jimmy.
"You were planning to set me up, weren't you?"
At this point, he had lost his home, savings, and job. My name is Nina Dowell. I'm almost 35. I married Jimmy, my childhood friend who is a year younger than me, 10 years ago. We're currently renting an apartment and living together. We grew up in the same neighborhood and played together since kindergarten. Jimmy's family was wealthy and they lived in a mansion. We used to play hide and seek there. The place was so big that when Jimmy couldn't hide anymore, he would run to me crying, "Nina, Nina." I fondly remember how adorable he was, following me around. When I was in first grade, Jimmy envied my new backpack. "Let me borrow your backpack." He would borrow it and wear it with a big smile on his small back. A year later, when he got his own backpack, he started showing it off to me. I thought that was cute too. Jimmy outgrew me in height when I was in 4th grade. By then, he had become a basketball player and was good at academics. I used to get presents and cards from him every Valentine's Day. Around that time, I started getting jealous of the girls around Jimmy. I didn't realize it then, but now I know it was love. My first love. Years passed, and when Jimmy and I were in high school, he suddenly confessed his feelings. We started dating. After graduating from college and working for about 2 years, we decided to get married. Looking back, I've known Jimmy for a long time. My mother-in-law had already passed away, and my father-in-law was living alone in a big house. I would visit Jimmy's family home a few times a week to keep Eddie company and help him with chores. I often helped with shopping in the evenings. Eddie had always treated me like a daughter since I was little. I was fond of him and called him Eddie as if he were another father to me. I never thought he would actually become like another father to me. We both worked and had a joint bank account to save money for when we had kids. That said, I was worried because we couldn't have children. I'm already 35, which is generally considered an age for high-risk pregnancy.
"You're getting older. Maybe it's time to give up on having kids?"
Lately, Jimmy has been blaming my age for our inability to have children, and he's become disinterested in trying. Despite being hurt by his words, I still wanted a child with the man I love. I wished he would at least accompany me to medical checkups and be as informed about it as I am.
"Go to the hospital yourself. I'm busy with work."
When did my husband become like this? Is it since he started working and coming home tired every day? He's become cold towards me. Jimmy is a salesman, so maybe he's stressed from work. I try to make home a relaxing place for him, but it doesn't seem to resonate. As March was coming to an end and Easter was approaching, I asked Jimmy, "Where are we going for Easter this year?" He simply said,
"I have to work,"
and went to his room. Since Jimmy would be away for work, I decided to visit both my parents and Jimmy's parents. My parents and my brother lived together happily. Because my brother stays with them, I only visit a few times a year, but they always welcome me warmly. "I'm home." "Welcome back. Good to see you." I decided to confide in my mom about our struggles to conceive. She gently held my hand and told me, "Don't rush." Her words lightened my heart a bit. Thanks, Mom. Time flew by as I relaxed at my parents' house. It was already evening, and I had to go home to prepare dinner. I'm leaving now.
Come back anytime.
Home is always warm. I returned home feeling fulfilled and waited for Jimmy. He came home around 7 p.m., but he had already eaten dinner and went straight to his room. I ate a hamburger alone and put Jimmy's portion in the fridge. I was so happy during the day, but now I feel like crying. I wondered where I went wrong, but couldn't figure it out. Did I ever neglect Jimmy? Did I ever say something cold to him? Thinking negatively is a bad habit, so I decided to go to bed early. When I woke up the next morning, Jimmy had already left. I hadn't heard he would leave so early, so I couldn't see him off. The hamburger from last night was gone. He must have eaten it this morning. The empty plate was left in the kitchen. I've been telling myself that Jimmy is tired from work, but I work too, and I'm starting to feel like I can't take it anymore. Since it's my day off, I headed to Jimmy's parents' house in the morning.
Welcome!
Eddie greeted me warmly. Are you about to have breakfast? He hadn't eaten yet, so while Eddie prepared some bread and coffee, I made scrambled eggs and cooked bacon. I was worried that I might be intruding so early in the morning, but Eddie smiled and said,
"Thank you, it's delicious."
It's been a while since someone complimented my cooking, and it feels really good. Jimmy used to enjoy my cooking, but he hasn't said anything like that in years. I'm glad you like it, Eddie. Since I could spend my day off at Eddie's, we chatted and watched TV until the evening. We even got excited talking about a TV show we both like.
You like that show too, Nina?
Eddie and I have quite similar tastes. I decided to prepare not just lunch and dinner, but also some meals for Eddie to keep.
Thank you so much for doing all this,
he said multiple times as he saw me off, warming my heart. On my way home, I saw something shocking. Jimmy was coming out of an arcade, dressed in a suit. Maybe he finished work early because of Easter and stopped by. That thought crossed my mind, but I couldn't shake off my unease. The next morning, I decided to follow him to see where he was going. I felt guilty for doubting Jimmy and thought about turning back several times, but he ended up going to the same arcade as yesterday. Jimmy is lying to me. The realization hurt. When he came home that night, I confronted him about what I'd seen. Were you really at work? Please be honest. I tried to ask as gently as possible, but Jimmy didn't apologize. Instead, he raised his voice.
We used to have some money to spend freely, but now we don't because we're saving for the future.
But that's for our future children.
At your age, you can't have kids anymore. I want to stop saving and enjoy the present.
His words left me stunned, a mix of surprise and sadness. I couldn't find the words to respond. The conversation ended there. Jimmy sighed and went to his room. It was clear he wasn't thinking about our future. A few weeks later, I got a call saying Eddie was injured. I rushed to the hospital, but Jimmy said he was too busy with work to come. Eddie's injury wasn't serious, but it led to the decision for him to move into a retirement community. Eddie himself suggested it.
I don't want to be a burden on you, Nina.
I told him it wasn't a burden, but I also realized I couldn't be there for him all the time because of my work. I helped Eddie with the paperwork and preparations for moving into the retirement community.
How's Jimmy doing lately?
He seems busy with work. That's all I could say. Eddie seemed to sense something, but didn't press further. Jimmy hadn't visited his parents' house for a while and didn't help with any of the preparations. A few days later, the day came for Eddie to move into the retirement community. I accompanied Eddie to the retirement community early in the morning. It was already hot outside, and I was sweating after just a short walk. Jimmy was off work today, but he said,
"You going alone is enough,"
and left for somewhere else.
"Nina, you've been a real help. Thank you."
"I'll visit you again on my next day off." Eddie smiled warmly at me. One evening, after some time had passed since Eddie moved to the retirement community, Jimmy surprisingly initiated a conversation.
"So, now that Dad's in the retirement community, you don't have to take care of him anymore, right?"
I tilted my head, not understanding what Jimmy was getting at. Jimmy continued, serious-faced.
"You're unnecessary. I'm leaving this house."
I see. So, you want a divorce? Jimmy nodded silently. Ever since he blamed me for not being able to have children, my feelings for him had cooled. I easily accepted the divorce. We started discussing property division, including our shared bank account. I'm not good at these kinds of conversations, but they're unavoidable. That's when Jimmy said,
"I'll give you all the money we saved together."
Jimmy seemed to have strange confidence because his family is wealthy. As we proceeded with the divorce, Jimmy moved back to his parents' home. Goodbye.
Yeah.
It felt so anticlimactic, considering we'd spent so much time together since we were young. A few days after Jimmy moved back home, our divorce was finalized. Both of us were about to take new steps in life. Just then, I got a call from Jimmy.
"What the hell is going on?"
He said that movers had suddenly shown up at his parents' house and started taking furniture. He accused me of doing something. Actually, when Eddie was still at home, he had told me.
"Jimmy never visits. Maybe we spoiled him because we had money."
Eddie looked sad. When Eddie moved to the retirement community, he said,
"I won't use this furniture anymore, and if I give it to Jimmy, he'll just waste the money,"
and had transferred everything to me. So the movers were arranged by me. I also told Jimmy that the house and land were already on the market and a buyer had been found.
"You can't just do that."
Jimmy had apparently counted on the house, land, and furniture for the divorce and was yelling at me over the phone.
"You hid this to trap me."
Since Jimmy wouldn't listen, I decided to let his father explain.
"Jimmy, it's been a while since we've talked like this. What's going on, Dad?"
Eddie calmly said,
"It's all settled. There's nothing you can do. You've been the one not visiting or calling me for a long time. The discussion is over. Game over."
Jimmy seemed to be at a loss for words after hearing that. A few days later, I visited Eddie at the retirement community. I heard that Jimmy, who had lost his home, furniture, and savings, had moved into a rundown apartment. Apparently, he had also quit his job, counting on his family's money, and was struggling to find new work. Right now, he's barely making ends meet by doing manual labor as a day laborer at construction sites. No one could have seen this coming.
"How's Nina doing these days?"
I rented a place near my parents' house and am living quietly. I spend weekdays having dinner and weekends at my parents' house, unless I have other plans. My parents and brother are happy to see me so often. I'm also happy to help with household chores.
"Nina, you're such a good kid."
Eddie smiled at me as he always does. Then he continued with a smile.
"Jimmy came to see me 3 days ago. He asked how I was doing here and if there was anything he could do for me."
Hearing this, I felt a bit relieved. Maybe Jimmy had finally come to his senses. Being in a tough situation made him realize how privileged his past self was, and what he should truly value now. Can I come to visit you like this sometimes?
Of course, thank you as always.
Even after divorcing Jimmy, Eddie remains an important figure in my life, almost like a second father. I hope that someday I can have a good relationship with Jimmy again. With that thought, I head back to my parents' house. Welcome back. How is Eddie? He's good. He seems happy that Jimmy visited him. Oh, that's good to hear, my mom said. Nina, can you help with dinner? Of course. Let me put my stuff away first, I replied and quickly headed to my room. I want to protect what's important to me and continue living in this peaceful life.